So about 5 years ago, Paul Langston from the Baptist State Convention came to me and said, hey, I'd love for you to come with me to Armenia. And I said, tell me more. And so he began to share with me about the needs in Armenia, began to share with me about the churches. And actually a little bit later, I met Ivester, the General Secretary of the Baptist Union there. And as he began to tell me, I just began to feel like, yeah, this is something I need to do. We really need to go to Armenia and see what's going on there.
Just in interactions with like Marty and other pastors, heard about this trip to Armenia. Really didn't know much about Armenia, or I heard we were going to go do some leader training or some pastor training. But I had to figure out where this place was in the world before we went. So it was a lot of learning that happened in a short period of time. So Armenia is in Central Asia, and while it's a Central Asian country, some people would say it has a little bit more of a European. So it's kind of some Persian culture, European culture mix. But one of the things I thought that was interesting about it, because of its location in the world, that it is at least culturally a Christian nation with a state church. But is also open to other denominations and other believers working there. So there was more freedom in terms of religious freedom for Christians in that country than in a lot of countries that have historically, or we think of in that region.
So the main work that we did was pastor training, and the pastor training was very basic. The truth is we did two trainings, first with the pastors from the South, who are pastors from another country who we can't go into, but they could come across the border. And they were so hungry because they can't gather as a church. They can't get training. They can't even sing praises hardly together because they can't make noise in their small house churches that are meeting. And so that was just very unique, just being able to be with them, almost immediately having a connection. Even though this is a country that our country, for all intents and purposes, generally does not like. And they probably have some bad taste in their mouth about Americans as well. But because of Christ, it bridged the gap. And almost immediately, and I could tell you more, but even the greetings, within the first day they were hugging us. And before we left, they were kissing us on the cheek. And it was very humbling. That was the first part of the week. The second part of the week, we actually were with Armenian pastors. We had a chance to preach in some of the churches as well, but the training with Armenian pastors was really good. We had probably 40 or 50 pastors there, and they were also very hungry, asked a lot of questions. The training itself was really good, but I think the camaraderie in both cases, the meals together, the breaks together, there was just a lot of good conversation and really a brotherhood that developed.
Well, one of the things that I've learned over the last little while, and especially since we were over there, just hearing the stories again and again, the partnership that Baptist on Mission has had with Armenia for the past 20 years is really coming to fruition now, as not only has the Armenian church been built up, but now they're at the place where they can reach out to others, other countries that surround them. So, geography, that Armenia is like a Christian drop in a big Islamic bucket there in the Muslim world, in the Middle East. And so when you think about Armenia, they say to be Armenian is to be Christian. And so one of the things that we've got to do is help them to grow as Christians, because like us, they have very many what we would call cultural Christians. So one of the things we want to do is strengthen the church there. But as we strengthen the church there, they have relationships and opportunities to reach, particularly right now to the south of their country, reach Muslims that are in closed countries. And yet, while we can't take a flight into those countries and do ministry there by equipping leaders there in Armenia, we have a great opportunity for our local churches, as Yates Baptist Association and beyond, to actually reach people who right now don't have much access to the gospel. And yet, what we're told is, just like we see cultural Christianity here, there's cultural Islam there. and there are people looking and searching for answers, for hope in this world. And in a small way, the way that God's orchestrated this, we can actually be a part of this greater movement of the kingdom advancing over there, just like we hope to be here as well.
What I came away from that experience with the greatest joy about was that we were seeing the Armenian church, Baptist church, had a vision to reach and impact the countries that surrounded them. And so, well, you would think, well, they've got enough going on, they have enough challenges themselves. They were very strategically and with great faith addressing the issue of the need for the gospel to advance in what we would call completely unreached countries. And so it was like Armenia, I came away seeing Armenia as a hub for the continual movement of the gospel around the world. Of course, we often think of like we're bringing the gospel other places, and this is much more in the center of where God's work began. Since we were in the shadow of Mount Ararat, which is mentioned in Genesis as the place the ark came to rest, to recognize God has been at work here for a long time. It certainly didn't come with us, but we were just getting a chance to be a part of it.
I'm thinking about things from a pastor perspective, but a lot of my people can go and help building projects that are going on over there, help with volunteers for sports camps or VBSs, as we kind of put short-term burst of energy into a long-term work that's going on there in Armenia, and those things have been successful as well. Just being on the ground, seeing the fruits of those things. We've got a church that's in Armenia that one of our North Carolina Baptist churches helped to build. Now they're having to add on because they've got too many kids and youth, and they need another room so that the youth will have a place. The youth are meeting in the kitchen. They have one classroom. They've got a worship space, a classroom, and a kitchen, and the youth are meeting in the kitchen. And so the hope is to go back and to add on to that building. But that was the fruits of NC Baptist working with the Armenian Baptists and Yates Baptist now coming alongside of that to see that church there, the Armenian church there, has everything they need to be successful when it comes to advancing the mission.
One of the things I most enjoyed about this trip was the camaraderie among our team. So we had 5 pastors from YBA. We also had a couple other associational missionaries from other associations. We had another guy who used to be an associational missionary. And so we had a larger team. But as we each did training, as we each preached, as we each did these things, it was so cool to see different people with different gifts who teach differently, who preach differently, but we preach the same gospel. And a number of the pastors, actually all the pastors from YBA said, this has been so great because I've got to hear this guy. I've got to hear this guy. I've never heard him preach. I've never heard him teach. And I believe there was a camaraderie, a friendship that was forged on this trip that will long last. I think we're going to be in eternity someday and say, hey, remember back in 2022 when we went to Armenia? And so that was a great thing. And so I want to invite other pastors and other churches to be bold, take a chance, go on a trip. Could be to Armenia, could be somewhere else, but go and see what God has for you, because I believe God also wants to teach us a lot while we're on these trips.